is the podcast where we discuss all things integrative health and wellness, interviewing folks from all over the world, sharing insights and wisdom on how to live a healthier life in mind, body, and spirit. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mind Body Detox Podcast. I'm your host, Integrative Intuitive Medium, Kara Lovehart, and today I'm going to be bringing on a special guest, Dr. Teri Baydar, and we're going to be talking about flipping the switch to higher consciousness. So for those who are tuning in live today, we happen to invite you to chat to us, comment to us, as well as always. We are welcome to see what you're commenting on as far as this episode goes. But in general, a lot of this podcast, we're talking about ways we can downregulate our nervous system. We're discussing ways we can move into more love and peace and joy in our lives. And so when this opportunity to interview Dr. Teri came up, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a perfect alignment for all of you listeners out there. So I'm really excited to bring her on the show and interview her today. So Dr. Teri is a renowned leadership coach and CEO whisperer. So she earned her MBA from Hult International Business School and with accrued training in authentic leadership, managing complexities, and behavioral economics. So between writing, coaching, and teaching meditation, Dr. Teri devotes herself to Love Conscious Human. And it's a one-of-a-kind educational platform for evolving humans, for a lot of you guys who are listening to the show. Love Conscious Human was created to support those ready to embody love consciousness and participate in crowdsourcing for a better future. So if this is your first time or 100th time listening to this podcast, you know I talk a lot about the concept of what I label radical love. You know, ways that we in this world, love is something that seems so scarce in the way that we not only treat each other, the way we treat ourselves, our minds, and our bodies. So my goal and my life purpose is to embody and to spread that radical love. So Dr. Teri is the perfect guest for us for this show, and specifically talking today about flipping the switch to higher consciousness. It's actually a book that she's published, and in general, we're going to talk about that topic. So let's bring Dr. Teri on here, everybody. Hello. Hi. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to hear more about your journey and what really brought you into this space. So yeah, let's dive into that. Tell us what really got you involved in exploring consciousness specifically.
Well, okay. So I was born clairvoyant and precog. So that was sort of something I had to deal with and then understand like what to do with that. And then I ended up in a special unacknowledged project working in my early 20s in Paris, France, for a group of psychologists, sociologists who were working on social engineering, understanding the mechanisms of the unconscious mind, like what happens at a below the liminal line, all that stuff. And they sought out people like me to figure it out. And that's where I really started to understand consciousness. So I've been at this for over 35 years. It's very much my purpose in life to, bring love consciousness to the world and bring an understanding to the world and also to business about what is war consciousness, what is love consciousness, how does this work, what is really in our best interest, what are the choices we need to be making if we want a future that is healthy and happy and joyful and productive.
I'm really curious of how you got into the business world, because it's such an honor to walk a path, I think, of being a bridge for, hey, because I'm a medium as well. Like, hey, we also have these interesting paranormal, supernatural, according to people who aren't aware of the capacities of our human nature. How do we bridge that into the business world? So I'd love to hear about that, how that started and how that's been going.
Well, actually, I walked away from a lot of this work because I thought I was supposed to, be a business person, and I had to chase money and a lot of the things that we think we're supposed to do according to the social constructs that regulate us, that we have inherited or absorbed in life. And I got sick, and then it was like my whole body was like, if this is what you're going to do with this one precious life that you have, we're just going to go on strike. Go ahead. Like, this is what's happening. It was really kind of a do or die situation for me. And I figured out that I was so far off path that I really needed to get back to it. So what happened was I had this whole beginning of studying consciousness and social engineering and all this stuff that was really interesting. Then I went into this whole business thing. And then I was like, no, you can't just do in business what they're telling you to. That's actually not correct. And so then I had to move away from that, and I merged the two. I started out as a spiritual life coach and very quickly moved into leadership development coaching.
Yeah.
And also in the meantime, I became an all-faith minister to work with all of the different minds and mindsets and belief systems of my clients.
Wonderful. I think that's amazing to be able to have the awareness and that non-polarized thinking that comes with love consciousness to be able to meet people where they're at. And I think that we need more of that. So I'd love for you to talk to us about defining what you speak of as war consciousness versus love consciousness, because for people maybe in the business world who have maybe social programming around love and war and peace, and it feels for them there's this that unfortunate stigma of the 60s and 70s, which were honestly the best thing that happened to the consciousness of the planet to move us forward. Now we're seeing the renaissance of the psychedelic renaissance coming back with more and movement all over in general for raising consciousness. But what is your definition of war and love consciousness?
Well, like I said, I spent 35 years trying to figure this out. I spent 10 years writing a book and boiling it down to the most pithy, basic concepts. And so war consciousness is where you're stuck in your left brain and you have to capture, contain, and control something or somebody out there. You also want to be in charge. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. I have to be on top. I have to get more out of them than they get out of me. And it's all this calculating and manipulating to somehow compare and compete and beat and eventually even kill off. You know, that is war consciousness. We do it all the time. All the time. This is just such a big part of who we are being as humans today in the modern world that we really have to look at. So that's that duality, dividedness. And it comes from inside, that head-heart disconnect. Who's going to win, the head or the heart? Why? So then there's the other side of it, which is the love consciousness. And that's an understanding and a state of being mindset where everything is interconnected. We're all in this together. We are complementary. It's sort of this, instead of being this binary right and wrong thinking, it's this complementary constellation type of data points where we kind of step back, look at the bigger picture. What's really happening here? What's important? What needs to be done? We have this more parental type of thinking where we are parent to the situation rather than feeling like we're overwhelmed by it and it's doing something to us. And from that love conscious space, we get to do away with that cognitive dissonance. Head and heart can align. You're stronger, you're smarter, you know what to do because all of your heart and all of your mind are working together. You become this much more, I'm going to say, powerful being, which is why I work with a lot of CEOs and social entrepreneurs that are pioneers forging the way. And so they come out so strong all the time, and people are like, what are you doing? How can you do that? And they're just moving through all of the I want to call it fires and trials with ease. Because they got this down. They understand how to navigate war consciousness because they are elevated enough in love consciousness that it's not really much of a problem. It just becomes logistics.
Yeah. I think that it takes a very dynamic individual to be able to walk that line, because I'm curious as far as, you know, in the higher consciousness perspective, just from my experience, it's not a matter of having to reach out, no forcing, no trying to get people to hear. It's more about things come, things flow. It rises up to meet you. The path just lays itself before you. But
Yeah.
I find it interesting along that journey. There is this almost a lot of individuals who are really passionate about consciousness, their personal awakening. They're so excited about what they're experiencing beyond this duality. And they start to want to preach or convert or get people to come up to this space where they feel they're at. And I don't like to say the word up because it still denotes a hierarchical, which is still war consciousness. But that's the only label that is sort of aware to talk about it, I think, as far as the old paradigm. But I find it interesting because when these individuals are trying to convert or trying to get people to come to their side, which isn't really, there's no sides. It's really interesting because they're not always ready to hear in the way in which it's spoken. And it seems like I'm curious if what I want to learn more about your journey as far as navigating, watching a lot of our collective, of our society being almost stuck in a hamster wheel of that fight or flight through just stimulation, how they're interacting on their daily basis, not being aware of where they're at. And having an opportunity. There are people out there that are trying to help wake people up, and they're doing it in the way that they can hear it, like loud and in your face and 30-second, 15-second Instagram reels or TikToks to try to go, hey, but they're doing it from this old paradigm of war consciousness. So I'm just curious of how that shift and that crossover and that bridge is looking like as we move into that, or as people start to, maybe if they feel called to share and uplift humanity, what does that look like between that way of communicating to a different paradigm of human consciousness versus this new space? I hope that question makes sense.
It does. It's huge.
I know.
That's huge. Okay. There's like about 20 different facets to that question.
Yes.
But okay, so let me lay out something that I think will be useful for you. The book is written in 3 parts. Part 1 is what I call the basics of mind. So I'm throwing out psychology and all this stuff, and I'm just going to the basics in layman language about how the mind works and what you need to be thinking about. Part 2 is this incremental journey, all the little things you can do to shift yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Stop worrying about others is one of them. Mind your own business.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, and understanding your own internal workings and how you build that. Part 3, you're going to love this, is the emergence of the daemon. The daemon is the higher self. It's that thing we use, you and I, to channel. Okay. That's the part of us that we use where we go and take our little egos and we set them to sleep on the couch. And then we channel from a space of that more of what I call, because I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, emptiness. And that emergence is natural. Everybody has a daemon. It's a divine seed. It's in there. Everybody's got one. All you need to do is understand the landscape. That's how the mind works. What you need to do as a gardener, what are the weeds that need to be pulled? That's part 2 of the book. And what do you need to seed out? How do you give it some sunshine, some water, whatever? And then 3rd is, look, it's growing. It happens on its own. So if you actually look at the book, if you take the time, 52 chapters, 52 weeks for a year of a journey for yourself, I'm giving it away. This is what I do for a living. If you take it and you just read, like most of the chapters are 2 pages, you just read that, you ponder it, you go for a walk, you take it into your meditation, whatever you're doing, you just work with it a little bit for a week or so, or take your time. Maybe it takes longer, maybe it's faster, doesn't matter. But when you do that, you will know you're being effective because synchronicity will kick in. It is natural. This is you, this book is you responding to your evolutionary drive. That's it. It's not a methodology that's been fabricated by mankind. This is a discovery and a boiling down and explaining of how it works naturally. All humans are trying to evolve.
Yeah.
It's what we're trying to do. All of us have a divine seed or daemon. Daemon is ancient Greek term. It's been around forever. We've known about it. It's not new. And some of the mental models I use, I take from the 11th century, way before Freud. You know, we don't need to talk about the ego. The ego is what? It's an invention by Freud. Before Freud, there was no ego. So that's all clinical stuff. Let's leave it on the couch. We don't need it. Let's just be who we are. I hope that kind of helps. Like my rant came after your rant. I don't know if they correspond.
No, I think it's great. It's giving people a framework for, shifting their consciousness. That 52 weeks, easy, short, is really helpful. I think that's really doable. And especially the bite-sized pieces, which our attention span is so short because we've been coerced or guided or trapped in a space or feeling trapped that we're in this fight or flight. And I think that's really, really doable.
So
shifting.
I'm also going to give you something else, because it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the reason I want to do that is 2s are in the mind, war conscious by nature. It puts us in our left brain, and then we start to go down the rabbit hole of that binary thinking that takes us into a landscape that is good for war consciousness. If you do anything, try to do it in 3s. Try to understand what's more. I like to joke that if you get out of your left brain into your right mind, 1 + 1 = 3. And that's really kind of like it's where there's synergy, and the outcome of the 2 things joining is greater than just the sum of the numbers.
Yeah. And that's hard to really explain when you're only operating from that awareness. It's a very different space. And I think what I've seen, it's so fascinating when people start to shift into love consciousness, like those aha moments, like you said, the synchronicities. That's a big guidepost, or a good guideline for myself. If I'm not seeing synchronicity on a regular, everyday, daily basis, now I always say not to the degree that you're totally spiritually bypassing and going on a complete hypomanic episode. There's a fine line between spiritual psychosis and actually seeing synchronicities. I always make a point to say that with a mental health crisis we struggle with in our world right now. But if I'm not seeing synchronicities on a daily basis, that's a really big shine for me. So I love that you talked about that in your book.
And I also talk about spiritual bypassing.
Oh, you do? I love it.
Yeah.
Tell us about your take on that. I'd love to hear about that.
So, because a lot of people, leaders, executives, they come to me and they're like, "But that's the way the world is. You gotta fight. You gotta beat the other one. It's called competition." And then and then they're like, "I'm not gonna like woo my way through this," right? So that's like that one stance, and then I get the other stance, which is the opposite, where somebody's like, and this happens more with women.
Yeah.
Where somebody's being a little bit of a doormat and like,
Yes.
"Oh, it's okay. No, yeah, I'll do it." And they're like always giving up their own path, their own potential, their own sweat, blood, tears, energy to please or appease somebody else. And it's okay. Now, making that okay is what I call, and they'll do it from a place of like spirituality, or that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve, all of that. And I'm like, you're not here to be a doormat. Okay, you're here to serve. But serving also means that you have value and worth, and you can't just spiritual bypass your way to it's okay absolutely every time, because you have to go through the friction of it's not okay. There is a moment where you need to pick yourself up and do what's needed and elevate yourself and speak for yourself. Know what's right, know what's wrong, and stand up for something.
Yeah. And that's really love consciousness. I'd love for you to speak on that because it's love. You can't, it's not loving to the self to neglect, to deny, to allow abuse, to allow also, the thing with spiritual leaders and spiritual teachers, gurus, mentors, whatever. We were talking about this last episode that I did about this sense of, you talked about value, but this sense of, all my work is spiritually based, I don't need to charge for it. Now, in certain circumstances, some people are so valued and in their journey, they have financial support that they are like, I'm giving this for free. This is my lineup. I'm lined up to donate, but we're not monastic. And that's the difference. And there is this weird perspective around you shouldn't charge for your gifts or whatever because of that. So I'd love to hear about that, is how it relates to love consciousness and value in the self.
Absolutely. Because love consciousness is based in equanimity, meaning I am just as valuable as you, and you're just as valuable as me, because we're not comparing. Okay. We're not judging who's better than the other, or who, so we have to bring in an understanding of, I mean, the money thing is just, right. So it is love conscious to love oneself just as much as you would love another, and love another just as much as you would love yourself. And it's also loving other things. People are like, oh, I don't like things. I'm like, well, I actually love my toaster because I use it absolutely every morning, and I actually clean it on a regular basis because I want it to work well. It's like we can actually have a form of love, if you call it that, for objects because they're useful. I love my book. It came out really well. I wrote it 6 times, but it came out really well. It's doing its job. It's reaching people. All of my clients are loving it. And then I can actually, push it out there in the world, and people can just have it and use it for $20. They can just, or even 10 if you want to do the ebook thing, you can just be okay with learning and growing yourself. And I think there's this idea that the self is bad, but there's a difference. There's the petty self that lives in war consciousness, and there's the higher self that lives in love consciousness. Now, what we have to do is get centered so that the petty self is being commanded by the higher self. And when that happens, all the war consciousness stuff actually kind of just fades away. You're no longer in conflict. There's no longer cognitive dissonance. Your triggers go away. You actually walk around every day feeling good, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. And you have like the power to make decisions. And what the left brain just does is it just becomes your logistical center. When you go to buy a plane ticket, what are you clicking on?
Yeah.
That's it. Like that's how the left brain function gets transformed out of war consciousness into a great operational manager.
Yeah.
Rather than leading the charge and judging and comparing and calculating and manipulating.
Yeah. I'd be curious about your journey being a Tibetan Buddhist, and where individuals maybe are potentially blocking their flip or their switch to higher consciousness because of a solidified perception around their identity, where this is the way I am, that fixed mindset, like this is just who I am. And, I'm a logical, like you hear in the spiritual community, I'm a Virgo, I'm black and white critical thinker. There's this, that's just who I am. And, you're thinking about this left brain, well, if I'm a Virgo out there thinking, how can I get out of that? This is just who I am. I'd be curious of what your thoughts are around that.
Oh, so I kind of heard 2 questions in there. One was about the Buddhism, and the other was about the just who I am.
So your perspective, being a Tibetan Buddhist monk, not a monk, but a Tibetan Buddhist, you could be a monk. And that journey spiritually and how that relates to when people have a solidified identity.
So I'm not sure how the Tibetan Buddhism actually affects me on that, because I've studied so much that I feel like what we do is the psychology part is really, for me, kind of toxic sometimes. It's
Yeah.
because, well, my parents did this to me, so this is how I am.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no. And I've had many trials. Now, actually, it was when I was 21, working in Paris in the social engineering that we were doing all these studies on the unconscious, subconscious mind and the power of suggestion. And we were figuring out that you can get people to do things without even them understanding why they're doing it. And then we're like, okay, those are just constructs. So then I started to work on what I call patch reprogramming. And that's where you take a small part of who you think you are and you sit down and you create an antidote around it. And I do that. There's also a chapter in there about the antidotes against your social programming or your psychological programming. And one of the big ones is like, well, I'm just a poor soul. I'm just not good enough. And that's a core corrupt code. First off, it's not real. It's being generated by a saboteur critical voice that is out of
Mhm.
control.
Yeah.
And it's also very detrimental. Now, okay, there are certain reasons for it being there, but in our modern society, we don't need that at all. For the most part, it's very rarely do we need to go around thinking we're not good enough. And so there are many ways to go about this. And the antidote is just sitting down with yourself and writing from using your logic and
Yeah.
showing yourself, writing down all the times you were good enough, writing down like how all the people around you have told you that you did
Mm.
a good job, where you did a good job, what are your strengths, like, and just like making a list. And then every time you think, oh, I'm not good enough, and you start to have that little panic, you go back to the list and you're like, oh, okay. So this is getting out of hand because it's actually not really true because I have the logical proof over here. And so that's an exercise that a lot of my clients go on to shift their mindset about who they are and
Yeah.
and how this shows up. I do a lot of debunking on social constructs.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I asked that related to the Tibetan Buddhism because a lot of meditation and mindfulness usually is a path to lead people to explore their identity and where they have solidified that perspective in their introspection. So I'm thinking when you said, what would happen in the world if every single person just went into a situation thinking that they were good enough? And you said there's really no circumstances that would be an issue. If anything, even if they were, their first time ice skating or roller skating and falling down and being an adult and being super open and vulnerable and laughing at themselves, they bring so much joy into the world. The
Yeah.
only thing I can think of that would be an issue, obviously, be like, I'm not a surgeon, but I'm going to go in to do surgery today. Like that's a matter of training, not a matter of
Yeah.
foundational,
Right.
good enough in your character, who you are. But just,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, I love it. That's
Yeah.
great.
One of the things I tell always, and I'm like a broken record on this one, which is act, evaluate, learn, adjust. Act, evaluate, learn, adjust. That's how life works. There's no textbook. As much as I've tried to write the user's guide, there's really, you really have to experience it. And you have to take an action, however small, and then evaluate how did that work out? And then learn, what do I learn from this? How do I adjust for my next little action? So we take all these like small little tiny bites every day in our mind, in our heart, in our relationships, in whatever we're doing and learning moving forward. And also, there's a great thing about that scientifically, keeps your peptides in your brain nice and elastic.
Tell us more about the peptides.
So if you think the same thought over and over, like I'm fat, and that's what you think. So every time you put on your clothes, look in the mirror, you go, oh, I'm so fat. Okay. I've been there, done that, know it, whatever. It's a girl thing. So with that, you're creating what is known as a well-worn pathway in the peptides of your neurology in your brain. So basically the brain cells. And if you decide, so think of it like if you go out in the woods or in your backyard somewhere, and every single day you walk the path is well worn. It gets hard, nothing will grow there because it knows naturally. And even the trees, they've done studies like the trees know not to send their branches that way because they'll get broken off. I mean, literally, the trees have that kind of intelligence. So with that, if you're on a well-worn path, in your thoughts, you're creating all these hard pathways, which makes it hard to go off the path.
Yeah.
If you act, evaluate, learn, adjust, you're taking all of these little small steps off the path. You're allowing yourself to try a bunch of new things. And as you do that, the well-worn path, you don't have to go there anymore. What happens in the woods when the well-worn path stops getting used? Oh, we're going to recycle that. So then the plants come back and they're like, so nature starts to take over and says, we're going to use that real estate for something else. It's exactly what happens with your peptides. They get recycled. I think that is the most cool, I geek out on this stuff ever, that the neuroplasticity of our brain allows us to recycle our peptides.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Like, how cool is the body to do that?
Yeah. I really love that illustration. Like, I think that is amazing gift you have to share stories like that, because I know that I geek out. I want to hear the biology and I want to hear all the terms, but I love that illustration. I can even visually see that path being grown with new life and taking off that main path to restructure and reform everything. So we talked a little bit about, in general, your book, Flip Your Switch. I want to know really what called you to write it. Like, what was like the day, like, oh, I need to write this book. Like, what happened?
I got sick a second time. And I was working very well. I had all this knowledge built up, and I was writing spontaneously a lot. And I'm like, wow, I understand this. I am rocking it. My clients are just like shooting off like rockets. There's all this awesome stuff that's happening. And then I'm walking around going like, nobody knows this. Nobody seems to know this. And especially in business, nobody's like paying attention here. And I felt like I got sick, and I'm like, if I die, this is lost.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, and then also it's, getting some guidance from above and like, well, honey, what did you come here to do?
Yeah.
You need to think about this. So I was like, okay, I need to boil this down because, there are the Tibetan masters, there are the Hindu masters that I studied with. That's great. They have all this, but it's like, oh my God, it's like heavy duty, Like I'm going to Harvard and studying with, Lama Migmar over there. And it's just like endless learning and reading and studying and then sadhanas and this. And I'm like, okay, this is great, but no ordinary person can do this. I don't have kids. And so that really freed me up a lot. And I'm like, I got to do something with this. And so it was really getting to that. I almost died. What did you come here to do? So now it's sort of like, okay, get this out there. Maybe one day in a couple generations, people will be talking every day about war consciousness and love consciousness. They'll understand, and it will be common terminology, and they can, share their experiences around this framework and understand how the mind works without feeling like anything's broken, without and be also on a growth path without being on some kind of treadmill. It's like I just really want the world to be better.
Yeah.
And this is literally what I consider my first contribution. I want to make a second one, which hopefully will be how to heal the broken business model, where I go deeper into the economics of war and love consciousness in business.
Yeah, I would love to see that, Dr. Teri, because so I run a holistic wellness clinic. We've been 10 years in operation, and the way we do business is very intentional, conscious business. And when individuals come in and new team members, they're almost coming from like a place of being shell shocked of like, wait a minute, are you serious? This is how you operate? Like, you mean you look at me as an individual? Like, that doesn't compute for a lot of people. And sometimes at first they think it's too good to be true. I think we went to a job fair during COVID where it was all Zoom, and we had some people come into our Zoom room, and we were just sharing everything. And we share very vulnerable and open, like, this is why we can afford to pay you more, because we own our own property, like different things. They go, I don't know, this is fishy. What do you mean? This seems too good to be true. And we had people crying. And I was like, I had no idea, because I'm in a bubble. You know, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing things. Yes, we connect with the community and network and try to educate about holistic services. We do the podcast for that, so we can get the word out for people who have no idea. But when you're in this all day, every day, you forget that people don't know. So I'd love to hear a little bit, if you're willing to share, about what type of things you're looking to put out when it comes to the conscious business model, and any little tidbits.
Yeah, sure. Like already there's the one thing that we have to do, and it's explain to individuals that they are not a unit of productivity.
Yes.
Okay. You're an actual human being with value. Okay. You have a reason to be here. It's like a scavenger hunt. We don't always know what that is, and we learn as we go through it, but you are not a unit of productivity. You're a human being with a reason to be here. Now, I tell this all the time to all the executives, because I work with executives in corporations. And so this is frictional for them in the beginning. And I'm going to be doing my own podcast, and I'm going to be interviewing some of these executives to help other executives figure out, oh, you don't have to be that way, and you can still work in a corporation and do good and be yourself and have your family and be healthy, and all of that is that it's all actually possible.
Yeah.
So that's on the individual level. There's that. But then for the broken business model, we have to understand that there are two basic forms of economy. And there's what is called a natural economy. Circular economics is trying to do that in business, where nothing is lost or wasted. There's no toxic byproduct, where everything and everyone is taken into consideration in the manufacture, use, and reuse or recycling of whatever's getting consumed or used or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's circular economy. So that's wonderful that there are really great people working on that. One of the things that has to be debunked is and changed is the money models around what we call the plantation economy, which is, that pyramid where a few people up here are becoming super billionaires, and the planet at the bottom is the very bottom player in this is the planet, which is getting trashed because everything falls on it. And then we have the so-called lower classes, where they're giving their blood, their sweat, their tears, but they're not getting medical or help or education, or they can't elevate themselves, where, that we have all these glass ceilings, so they can't elevate themselves. And so this pyramid model is feudal lord stuff.
Yeah.
It's plantation stuff. It's, and it's incredibly warmongering.
Yes.
In order, so everybody goes into this model, and, I have a lot of executives who talk about suiting up to go into a meeting, and they're talking about putting on armor and boxing gloves. That's the metaphor they use going into a meeting. And we're talking even HR.
Yeah.
They're going in to figure out what they're going to fight for and what's worth it, and will they get their head cut off?
Yeah.
So, all of the mindset and the models around how we make money in this. And so the pyramid system is extraction based.
Yes.
And it's all about, how can I extract as much as possible, be on top as much as possible?
Yeah.
So everybody's doing it to everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the other system is a constellation model, not a pyramid model.
Yes.
And it's a partnership model.
Yes.
Where everybody is creating value, because, see, this is where people stuck in the extraction model get stuck.
Yes.
Is that they think that they're not going to make any money if they're not extracting from other people or the planet or something. No, actually, if you have good partnerships, again, it's a 1 + 1 = 3. You create value, which creates a valuable transaction. People are getting what they need, and they're giving you what you need, and we're all sort of like growing together in a direction of creation. Again, that's all love conscious, right mind, creation, creativity, constructiveness. Whereas, war conscious is destructive.
Yeah.
Where you're going to extract and kill until nothing's left. And the other one is the creation. So there are whole industries screaming to be born.
Yeah.
That are just under this glass ceiling of war, of like, if we could get some of this war consciousness out of business, we
Yeah.
get those industries to emerge.
Yeah.
Anything to do with regenerative.
Yeah.
I'm talking regenerative farming, regenerative medicine, regenerative waste management. I'm talking zero waste manufacturing. There are companies in Europe who create appliances, like a dishwasher. After its use, they come and get it, and it was designed to pop apart. So the plastic goes to their plastic, the metal goes to their metal, and guess what they do? Guess what they do with it? They more, so they get back and create the raw material for their next stuff. I get Nespresso coffee pods.
Yeah.
Pods, I send them back or drop them at a local store. The coffee goes to compost for farmers, and the aluminum pod goes to what? Guess what? More aluminum pods. How brilliant. It's not that hard most of the time to make these moves. It's in here and in here that the work needs to happen so that all these moves can happen. That's the only thing holding us back economically in business is our minds and our hearts, our mindset of war or love.
Yeah. I would encourage any listeners today. Of course, we're going to talk more about how we can shift from the war consciousness to love consciousness next here. But I would definitely encourage people to share this episode with anyone you know who is a business owner, who is a leader, who is an HR, who is a CEO, or friends of friends, because I felt like over the years, as a practitioner, we started having CEOs trickle in, organizational leaders trickle in, and just, that's just what I was attracting. And at first I was like, I own a small business, but then I was like, wow, I'm seeing the level of stress, the needing to manage that, but also the level of consciousness of what they're operating with, amazing capacities and desire to help, but having not the awareness. And so I love that I was doing that. I'm a massage therapist and energy worker. So I work specifically with help down regulating the nervous system so they could get in those spaces of consciousness. And I think that this is absolutely the way. That's what I really love to support. So if you're out there listening, this is really, really helpful. And even if you're a small business owner, like, it doesn't have to be big business. Like, this is just a different way of operating that I know is currently changing the planet. And it's just a matter of time before it really sets in. So tell us a little bit more about the systems that regulate our personal independence and confidence, and maybe how that relates to us shifting from war consciousness to love consciousness.
So in the book, in the first section, we do a lot of debunking of social and psychological constructs. Now, a couple of the really basic ones that affect all of us, like every day. Number one is the happiness formula lie. So that is the formula, so-called formula, where once I get the right job, the right spouse, the right house, the right car, the right look, the right dress size, I don't know, send my kids to the right school, or get everything, all these right things, then that will equal happiness on the other side of the formula, where, no, that has never worked for anybody. It's a complete lie, and it will never work.
Yeah.
First off, there's no end to the one side of it of getting something right. It's an if-then formula that is not non-realizable.
Yeah.
It's a lie, but it's great for psychological marketing.
Yes.
We can get you to buy a lot of things coming from your sense of lack and always seeking something on the outside of yourself to fill what you think is a hole inside you, but it's not. It's just a space waiting that the universe is waiting for you to fill up with yourself. And that's so that the happiness formula lie is really toxic. It's everywhere all the time. It's really affecting our kids in a strong way because they're getting
Oh, yeah.
so much through social media.
Yeah.
The next one is the sickness of more. And this also plugs into what some people call poverty consciousness or sense of lack. So it's an eternal not good enough formula or corrupt code, as I call it sometimes, where we think and feel that it's not enough. I need to go get something else. There's not enough.
Mhm.
There's not enough. Never enough money, never enough success, never enough fame. I'm never pretty enough. Never enough.
Mhm.
And that's another lie,
Yeah.
where actually, if you stop, slow down, and really notice and be grateful for all the things that are actually there supporting you, you learn to understand there is such an embarrassing abundance of riches that is there for you that you're not paying attention to. That is like step one. Like, and then that's when I get a lot of clients that cry over that one when
I
they,
love that you used the word embarrassing amount. It's so true. It's so true.
yeah, once you really start to plug into it, you're kind of like, oh my God, I get to do this. Oh my God, I get to have this. Oh my God. It's like, oh, I have this friendship. Oh my God, that's so wonderful. And oh my God, you're my husband. You're like so amazing. Oh my God,
Yeah.
you're my children. How did you know that? You're only 6 years old. How can you have this
Yeah.
like negative wisdom dropping out of your mouth? It's like,
Yeah.
you really start to plug into what I call the underlying fabric of love consciousness, which is the actual E field, quantum field that regulates us and supports us absolutely every microsecond of the day.
Yeah.
It's there,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. That fundamentally, war consciousness is not real, it's man made.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I'd love to see the shift in, I mean, I know you mentioned about the younger people really are struggling because they have a lot of programs that are being put in there. But I love to see the shift in just the way that we're using words to talk about our reality, to talk about seeing in the mainstream, talking about different timelines and different, it brings an awareness to the consciousness that it's not set in stone, that there's different options or opportunities, whether people believe in that as a reality or not. If they dive into the quantum physics of it, doesn't matter. It gives them psychologically an option that I can change this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very powerful.
It's very powerful. And again, in the basics of mind, part one, thoughts are things. Be careful what you think.
Yeah.
Notice like what you're putting out. Like by law of so law of attraction is a sub law of karmic law, and it's cause and consequence. And it's not about what you do or what you want. It's what you put out. The universe
Yeah.
responds to what you're putting out,
Yeah.
and then it comes in and supports you. And it changes your we call it vibration, frequency, whatever. Who
Right.
cares?
Right.
Like it changes your state of being,
Yeah.
elevating you just a little bit at a time. It will
Yeah.
always support you because it is fundamentally who you are.
Yeah.
Love consciousness is fundamentally what all life is.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that word love, because we operate from understanding love in perspective of human judgment.
Mhm.
So that human judgment of right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse, that's still like, war consciousness. But how do you understand looking at something that we would deem as ugly or impoverished, or, it's more the way we can look at art. Like art has so many different perspectives and it's in the eye of the beholder, but love is the loving eye that loves and accepts and embraces all things. What is your
Well, we have
take on that?
different degrees of love, right? Like there are different
Mhm.
kinds of love. Like when
Yes.
romantic love is kind of like the stereotype.
Mhm.
And but and even that can be very war conscious because we're looking to capture, contain, and control somebody who's going to fix us rather than fixing
Yeah.
ourselves and healing ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
So I mean that's already kind of like whoa. So but love, when I talk about love consciousness, it's really that pure, what some would call agape love,
Yeah.
that it's a state of being, And it's not a wishy-washy. It's actually, you use the word radical. I talk sometimes about ruthless love.
Mm.
And it's just like you're doing what love calls you to do from that higher agape love. Like, you know what you need to do. Your daemon is telling you what to do. So, buck up, baby, and go do it. And that is that's a form of radical love. And love consciousness is about being in alignment with what's next, what
Mhm.
needs to be done. What's the
Yeah.
next step forward? What's the next step to elevation for yourself, for
Yeah.
others? I also joke about, because I'm a personal development specialist, like the irony of personal development is that it makes you an altruist, and
Yeah.
you start to do things mainly for other people. And because you've healed yourself, and it's like, well, now what? Oh,
Mhm.
there's this whole world that needs healing too. Let me go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so love, I think of it as this, it's a field.
Yeah.
It's not just a way of looking at something.
Right.
It's
Right.
literally a field of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you guys are really interested and curious, Dr. Terry's talking about agape love. Just go back in that we have an episode series on love consciousness. We talked about the different love languages, how we love in relationships. We talked about the different forms of love, including romantic agape love. We talk about that, and also just how to move into that space. If you want to know more about what she's talking about, I think that's a great thing to check out. So we're going to start wrapping up here. I want to ask you, what is your vision for the future of humanity and how your book contributes to this?
I'm here to crowdsource love consciousness. Point blank. That's what I'm doing. I'm successful in my career. I'm happy to give it away. Like I said, I almost died, and it became my mission to get it out there as much as possible. I want people to be understanding and talking about what is this love consciousness and how do we get out of this war consciousness without falling into the trap of the dualism, thinking that it's a war or a conflict. It's not. It's a healing.
Yeah.
And I'm here to participate in the movement. I do believe the planet Earth is naturally shifting. I have perceived that and received information on that. And I'm very happy about that. I'm just trying to use my time and my skill set to move the movement forward.
Yeah.
Or, model the model and sort of embody love consciousness so that we can have more of it. And the way I see it in my mind's eye is that we have today, like you, Car, you have we have all these spots of light of love consciousness all over the planet. Now
Yeah.
we have these podcasts and these things, and so there's like these golden threads connecting us
Yes.
all over, and we're starting to weave our way around the planet, shifting the energy of the planet towards this until we get some form of critical mass. And we won't need 50% of the population.
Yeah.
We need, I don't know, maybe 7% of the population to get there, so that we can really, propagate and create a contagion that is consciousness and this pure, positive, critical mass energy.
Yeah.
To take us to the next level. And we're not alone. There's
Yeah.
lots of us.
Yes.
They keep popping up everywhere. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah, they've been hiding. A lot of them have been hiding, going through their own work, of going
Included.
through, hey, being seen is really hard and challenging in this space, and coming out. So I encourage anyone out there that's, you feel like you're small, you feel like you're not enough, you feel this imposter syndrome. There's maybe what I have to say is maybe there's too many people in this space doing this. No,
Not enough.
not enough. I agree.
That's where there's plenty of room. Bring it.
Hashtag love contagion, be the love contagion. It's so needed. It really, really is. And I think that's where I always say, be aware of when you compare. People compare themselves to others, and versus, like you said, stay in your own lane. Like, it's what you need to be doing here is all you need to be doing here. And it's enough. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of times I talk about do less better. It's not about doing the more so much. It's about really deepening your purpose here, deepening
Yeah.
the development of your potential,
Yeah.
deepening an understanding of your calling and your, this is the irony that we're all here with the same purpose, to be the best version of whoever we are. But that's absolutely unique to every single person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, let's do this together. You be you, go for it. I'll go for it. And let's all sort of like put our marching orders in towards something better, and do what you can with what you have at your fingertips. It's not somewhere else or somebody else or something else. It's you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage you guys to, we're going to put all in the show notes, all the ways to tap into Dr. Teri's social media coordinates and tap in with everything she's doing, and encourage you to go onto the online community. If you have not tapped into the Firefly Hollow Wellness online community, our business is called Firefly Hollow. Dr. Teri, you're talking about these lights that are lighting up. I'm like, that's how fireflies communicate. And that's kind of one of the reasons we use this as a business name, because we wanted to inspire our clients, inspire each other, and have this constellation model of how we're operating, not just locally, but also with the podcast, with our offerings as far as, hey, let's collaborate and do a retreat. Let's collaborate here and travel. Let's do something that we can do online remotely from wherever you are in the world. Like, that's what is happening. And it's so beautiful. So make sure you are aware that you have a community of places to tap into. Even if our community is not feeling the right one or in alignment, there are places out there just to allow yourself to tap into them. I don't think people have to go through it in isolation or alone, like feeling like everyone's really different than me. Like, you can be in a space where you feel that you're the only one who has this desire for love consciousness to be better, and it can feel very lonesome. So I encourage you to reach out. That's an act of love, reaching out and saying, I'm enough, that I deserve to have support too, and get fired up and inspired because I'm in a place, recognizing you're in a place that you feel that. So I will encourage that. So where can listeners learn more about you?
So if you're an executive or a CEO or somebody who wants coaching or a workshop or something in your company, you can reach me at whitelilycoaching.com. It's white lily like the flower, whitelilycoaching.com. I'm on Insta at Dr. Teri1, and I'm on LinkedIn, Dr. Teri Baydar. So it's, Dr. Teri Baydar 1, Insta. Okay. Dr. Teri Baydar on LinkedIn. And I have a new thing that I'm starting, which is loveconscioushuman.com. That is like, we're trying to figure out how we can create support for people who read the book. So there's videos going up there. There's, we're trying to make this, little hub of where you can do this. And it's still a work in progress, but we're putting it out there so that you can get some kind of support for the reading of the book.
Awesome. And for those of you who are not aware, we do have a book club. Our Spiritual Steep book club is what we have. And we'll be offering this book in the new year for 2024. Will be a book that will be really tapping into so that we can go through it together for a month or two. We do pick a book every month that's related around these topics. So if you're interested, we'd love to have you come and chat with us, our book club, and specifically. So we'd love to do that. We love to bring authors on that we have access to, that we can read it and then we say, can you come on? We have Q&A. We want to talk to you, and then tap into more of your platforms and what's going on there. So stay tuned for that. Again, you have to tap onto our online community to get the updates for the book club and everything like that. But other than that, I have two final questions I ask all of our guests for their first time with us. So the first question is, what is your favorite product, wellness topic, or self-care indulgence at this time? What are you doing for yourself that you love?
Tai Chi.
Wonderful.
I love my Tai Chi. It's like, don't even talk to me about going out on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, because that's my, and that's my radical love or ruthless love. Like, no, I'm sorry. That's blocked. That's me time, Tai Chi time. My body, my soul, everything needs that. I'm going to have that.
Yeah. I had a situation last night that my father's visiting and he needed me to take him to the hospital. And I said, "Is it an emergency?" He said, "No, it can wait." And he said, "If it can't, I'll call the ambulance." I said, "Okay, I'm okay if I need to take you, but you know what? This is my yoga time. I teach yoga and this is my time and my students' time. So I'm going to be doing that." And the old program would be like, "No, you need to cancel. You need to take your dad to the hospital." And no, like it's definitely a non-negotiable. So, and I love that you're doing Tai Chi. For those out there, we've talked about this on the podcast that, this love consciousness, moving from war to love consciousness is the mindset and all the pieces that Dr. Teri has in her book, but also like allowing the body to downregulate through these different movement practices. It's very powerful, especially for those of you who feel ashamed that you can't step into it. You keep getting into this either fight or flight or freeze and you're feeling guilty or shamed. It's about the body too. You have anything to share about that, Dr. Teri?
Yes. There's a chapter in the book called Make Your Body a Great Place to Live.
Awesome. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, the final question. Okay. If you could detox one thing in your life or the world right now, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm going to say war consciousness.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, but yeah, I completely agree. The
Yeah.
world would completely change so much. And there's luckily people like you, and there's so many of us out there that are doing little things in many different ways to help shift that for
Yeah,
our
we
world.
really don't need it. It's completely man-made, completely, it's destructive, and we don't need it. Like the transactions still happen, all the things will still happen. It just won't be coming from the same place and therefore won't have the same result.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before the end of our episode today?
No, I just love what you're doing. And I will be doing a podcast.
Okay.
Especially, I will be doing a special series for the Flip Your Switch User's Guide to a Whole New Mind.
Cool. Oh, cool.
So I think you should come on and read the book, pick a chapter, come on and tell me, like, let's do a Q&A recording of what might be hard spots for people that are reading it so that we can give them the, clarity on that. And I will be doing that for every single chapter of the book.
I think that's a great idea.
And just giving it away, really just take it, run with it, use it, and let synchronicity guide you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Again, you can check the show notes for tapping into Dr. Teri Baydar, and please tap into our resources for our online book club because we'll be doing this in 2024. We'll look at what month's coming up, and you can even probably vote on which month you want to do the book because we'll have that available in the online community. So thank you again so much for listening, and be well until next time, my friends.